So I'm Kevin, this is Shirali, and we have the wonderful pleasure of following OpenAI, which is always a fun task, great demos.
It stopped. The microphone stopped. It turned off.
Tech 1, 2, 3, back on. We good? I think we're back on, yes? Okay, I think you can hear me. All right. Who here is private sector and who is government? Quick show of hands. All right. So whether you're government, private sector, we all have some of the same problems. Massive sets of data come in, some that look really, really interesting that we'd like to analyze. The challenge we have, not enough people to analyze it, not enough technology potentially to analyze it. So both a technological problem, they don't have the skill sets or the resources, or the time. Okay, so how do we overcome something like that? That's what Shirali and I are going to talk about today. We're going to walk through a very interesting use case that we thought we wanted to take a look at and show you how we went step by step through it from simple, really easy to move solutions to really complex graph type analysis where we're able to go from insights to action very quickly. Okay? So many of you have probably responded, or your companies may have responded to the White House call for a response to their RFI for the AI action plan. Responses flooded, and I think it was March or April that it ended, over 10,000 different responses, all unstructured data, some varied in length, some, of course, really short. But altogether, it was about 14 million words. Now, I am not a speed reader, but even if I took a speed reader, 14 million words, if that's your job to understand these documents, you are reading for 6 months, full-time, reading all day long, reading all day long. How many people think that's going to be really good for analyzing data? Not likely, right? Even if you're like, even the smartest people in the world who can retain all that information, they're not going to be able to analyze that as a full body of knowledge coherently. They'll have some interesting insights, I'm sure, but to do it at scale that large is a really tough problem. So we're going to talk about how we analyze that step by step in a very short period of time. And this use case is applicable for anything. It's not just RFI action plans, right? It could be emails. It could be visual data. You know, I love what OpenAI showed the picture. What if you needed 5,000 pictures that you had to analyze quickly, and then not only just analyze it, but surface the insights from that through your organization? That's the kind of technology that we're going to show. So we did this in a multi-step process. This is how Microsoft thinks about AI. It's a very multi-layered approach. The idea is to democratize it. We want to take all that technology and bring it to everybody. So whether you're a knowledge worker or a data scientist or someone who's on the front lines, you should be able to use AI where you are, in the environment you are, to analyze data, to get insights, and to move projects forward. So for us, it starts in something like Copilot Chat, which we call the UI for AI. In Copilot Chat, you have access to the same kinds of models that Felipe and Mohammed just showed up here in terms of OpenAI. You can do basic chat, you can do chat with web search, and you can also bring agents, whether your own or some that Microsoft has extended through the ecosystem. In the M365 Copilot, you can actually begin to analyze data within your own graph. Okay? You can also use agents that we have in the next layer as you move towards business productivity. A deep research agent, we call a research agent, of course, very similar to what was just shown there. A facilitator agent, other kinds of agents that can extend through your platform. But you know what? We often find that there are problems that don't necessarily work with a generic approach. You need a really bespoke approach. And that's where you can use something like Copilot Studio or the Azure AI Foundry to develop unique models that will solve very specific problems. And then, of course, you can always connect third-party tools through, like if you had, say, ServiceNow or something like that, and you wanted to analyze or work with data in ServiceNow, you could take that data, surface it all the way through your entire layer to everyone in the chain, wherever they are, to be able to use those tools and analyze data and make actionable insights where they're going. Make sense so far? Yep, all right. So let's talk about how we did that with the action plan. We started with the real easy button. This was fascinating. We took 10,000 documents threw them into a SharePoint repository, and then we just asked SharePoint questions. This is not, there's no AI tools involved here in the sense of like a data scientist. It's just a human who's a domain expert who understands what they want from these documents, and they just start asking questions on the document, and it starts building a list inside of SharePoint for each file. Now that's going to be pretty good to get you intelligence where I can basically say, hey, tell me about what OpenAI's response was, what Microsoft's response was, how did Microsoft's response differ from Amazon's response, what did John Q. Public say about what was his concerns or risks, right? You can do that on individual documents, small documents, but that's not going to be good enough, say, for something where I want to understand what's the general appetite for risk across the entire country or the entire 10,000 plus people. And 10,000, by the way, is a small data set when you think about it. What if it was 50,000 or 100,000 documents? How are you going to retain all that information? That's where you start to go out into a different level of intelligence. So we took those documents, we went with our domain expert and our AI expert, and we started to build custom prompt engineering around those documents to understand what was in each one, specifically to solve the problem that we wanted to solve, which was what do people think about risks, benefits, concerns, are there commonalities across the entire set of document? And we took those with just generative AI, back and forth with the document, scoring for validity along the way, and it took us about an hour to analyze 10,000 documents. We then pushed that into a knowledge graph using something that's kind of like GraphRag, but it's kind of a newer version we're working on, to build that knowledge graph on the right. That took 20 seconds to build a knowledge graph on 10,000 plus documents, because all the work had already been done in terms of building the structures. And then we took 40 minutes to embed that and put it into a search engine so that we could surface that to any AI tool along the chain. Okay, so we went from what was 6 months of somebody just reading and not being able to really make use of the documents to about 2 hours where we had an entire knowledge graph and I could ask any question and immediately get feedback because all the work of the analysis had been done. All right? So what are the benefits there? You can start simple. Any worker who's along that chain can begin to ask questions. If you're an M365 Copilot user, you have access to SharePoint, and you can use generative AI to process intelligence across a small set of documents, say 10,000. That does take a little bit of time. If you find something there worthwhile, you just then push that up to, say, an AI worker and says, hey, I really like this. I think we're getting something. Can you leverage what I've just built and extend it with some foundation models that give us better insights and better intelligence? And they'll be able to do that and then resurface it back down all the way through the ecosystem. So you can start where you are, you can scale up and ask tougher problems, and all of it can be surfaced throughout Copilot. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over, and we're going to actually show you in action how some of this worked.
Thank you. I think I have one over here.
All right, folks, so mic check. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I booming? Perfect. Okay, so I am going to demonstrate 2 different ways of generating insights from unstructured data, kind of like what Kevin just talked about. The first method is going to be a quick scan solution where we used Copilot within SharePoint to scan all the documents and extract all the metadata. And then we built a SharePoint agent to analyze the data and generate key insights, right? So let's go through that demo very quickly. Now, not trusting the internet, I did create some videos based on me building this, and it kind of takes you through it. It's very fast. It's not going to take you more than 5 minutes to do what I'm just about to do, okay? All right, so here we have a SharePoint folder. We have over the 10,000 responses. Total information overload. So we used Copilot to extract the metadata. We added a column. Let's say we are starting with risks, right? So we changed the parameters to suit what we really want to populate in that column, and we click on that setup button after that. And that's the key, because that's where we're now prompting Copilot to summarize the risks that are provided in that are actually in each of the documents. Then we're going to test that prompt out, make sure we like the responses, or we can tweak the prompt further before saving it. And when we hit save, and voila, there you go. You can see that risks from each document have been summarized in that column, right? So similar to a cooking show, if I kept going through that process, here is the fully baked pie, right? We can keep populating different columns to create an entire database structured around all of those comment files in the folder. So I generated a sentiment analysis, the author's position or stance, a summary of each of the document, and then I also added some numerical scores like factual accuracy or argument quality or even a passion factor, right? And from there, let's say we take it, now that we have that metadata extracted, it's time that we now generate that connection, the perspectives, and make sure that all users can access that, right? So in this case, we are going to start with creating that SharePoint agent. We're going to make sure that the name and the purpose is really what we really want, so it suits our needs. We make sure that the source is extensive, so it's covering the entire SharePoint repository, and then we start tweaking the behavior. We first provide those startup prompts just to kind of help the users get started. And then, key point, we're now going to go ahead and add the instructions that's going to help us define the agent's role, tone, and limitations. And as you can see, that agent has been created right there, and it's ready for everyone to use, okay? Now, if I wanted to share this agent widely with my organization, I would just be able to publish it and have it available to everyone through their Copilot interface. Again, that UI for AI piece, right? And with that, now let's see how that agent is going to perform. So, as a user now, not the builder of that agent, we can now click on one of the starter prompts to get us rolling. And then you can see Copilot is doing what it does best, right? It's using semantic search, it's identifying trends, recurring themes, correlations, contradictions, all that. Quick output, it's providing us a nice broad overview. We can even add our own prompt in there, not just the starter prompt, to go further, right? Like, let's ask it to provide an unbiased summary of top insights using only facts, no sentiments. Quick, high level, simple. Gave us an output from a sample size of, let's say, 10 to 20 documents from within the 10,000 of them. So the focus here was ease of use, context awareness, fast summarization and analysis, and making sure we have some user-friendly responses out of our agent, all in a secure and compliant setting, right? Very good to form some high-level perceptions, maybe have some statistical reports, some trend analysis, but probably not good enough to give us some deeper insights so we can make some data-driven decisions, right? So now let's jump into our deep insights solution. So this is my second demo, and this is more of a custom developer-driven solution, right? We actually asked some of our AI experts to create a knowledge graph using GraphRag in Azure AI Foundry. And then we used Copilot to add that UI, again, to be able to query that knowledge graph. Okay, so let's go through this demo again. So GraphRag out of Azure AI Foundry actually provides a holistic perspective, but it does that through custom knowledge modeling. We're using advanced reasoning, persistent memory. So what I'm not demonstrating here is the actual pie making that happens behind the scenes. We already worked that out with our colleagues before, and now we're going to try out how it actually functions. So it's not as plug and play as Copilot, but you can actually get deeper insights because of it, right? Because it's using all the 10,000 documents to give you those insights and those perceptions and analyze all of those documents together instead of just sample sizing. So in this case, we are now accessing the previously built knowledge graph. Did I turn on my video? Yes, I did. And we're going to query it with the same prompt that we used in the previous demo. How do perspectives vary by comment or type? It's going to take a little more processing time. Since it is reasoning further, it's more powerful, but the output definitely is going to be worth it. So you can see now that the response is more in line with what we needed. It has provided that deeper dive into the diverse perspectives across all of the 10,000 comments. It's even calling out certain categories and certain specific comment files with very specific insights, right? We can also look into that history of queries and do a comparison of the same prompt with multiple queries. And we can see how the response is going to differ if the data behind the knowledge graph has been updated. And it also provides those citations. So now you know that the metadata was generated as part of that knowledge graph, and the citations actually build that trust. And you know that it came from the source files, so you can actually trust the information that's coming from. Okay? So now let's visualize that knowledge graph. This is my favorite part, right? So this knowledge graph, when we click on that red arrow over there, it automatically constructed from unstructured data, and it depicts that network of data points or entities and their relationships. Pretty cool, huh? In our case, these entities are the insights that were generated from the comment files. So you can also shift from the connectivity to the hierarchy view, which is the circles, right? The insights are grouped by category, federal law, financials, standards, privacy law, or risk levels. When we click on that, it's going to open the local community. We are showing the hierarchy and the citations back to the source file. So now you know that every insight that was used as part of that knowledge graph is traceable and grounded in real data, okay? And lastly, we're going to see how the developer version can be placed in the hands of general users within your organization. So Copilot, UI for AI, we built this agent very similar to how I did it for the SharePoint agent, and we published it for organization-wide use. So how am I, as a user, going to get to that information that the developer built using the graph rag? So here, I'm opening up my Teams app, and then I'm accessing Copilot Chat within Teams, and then our deployed agent is available to us. You can see that there. And we can use the same query as before. How do perspectives vary by comment or type? And ta-da, 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 here we go. And as you can see, the output is similar to what we saw in the developer's version, but the tone, format, style, probably more conversational and suitable for general audience. So I hope that kind of gave you a good idea of what we have between both of those demos. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin to finish up with the key takeaways.
Thanks, Shirali, appreciate it. So what did we see? Just a quick takeaway. We started with a large document cache. Users who weren't necessarily AI experts or even domain experts could start to experiment and work with the data where they were. Right in M365, if all they had was an M365 Copilot license in a secure, FedRAMP compliant environment, work over the data. Then we were able to use agents to architect at scale and bring in Azure AI Foundry and surface that documentation or the analysis and insights to the entire organization through an agent. Pretty powerful stuff. I love the democratization of AI. I used to think of myself as kind of sophisticated on AI until I met Tim, who did this kind of work that we were doing with GraphRag, and so. But now I can use tools that I know how to access and work with, and when our deep research folks like at Microsoft Research have fun stuff that they have created, we all get to benefit from it. So thank you, appreciate your attention.